Alright guys, let's do this lesson. We're going to talk about the properties of equality, and we're going to go into what are called algebraic proofs, which means we're going to need to know our properties. So, we have a list, and they should be fairly straightforward. We work with these anytime we solve any kind of problem. So we have our addition property, which means if I have a set of variables equal to each other, then I can go and I can add the same variable to each side and still get the same answer. Same thing with subtraction. I can have A, I can have B, and if I take away C and I take away C from both sides, I will still get the same answer. Multiplication, same thing. That's why it's all properties of equality. What you do to one side, you're going to do to the other. You guys know the distributive property. If you distribute, you multiply. So if you end up having A parentheses B plus C, you can distribute A to B. So you have A times B, and you can distribute it to C as well, and you have your result. Substitution, pretty much you're replacing the value that you've assigned any variable. Then we get to words that we really don't hear much. Reflexive, that means any number is equal to itself. Okay, you'll have this situation, you have 1 equals 1 and so forth. Symmetric is like a mirror. If you're going to have symmetry, you're going to have a mirror. So, and typically when you have a mirror, the first thing you see is the first thing you see on the other side. So it's like a flip, but it's still the same. A equals B, B equals A. Now if you notice what I wrote here on transitive property, if you zoom in, I said similar to the law of syllogism. Here's the example. If you have A set equal to B, and then you have B set equal to C, that means that you can actually take out the B's and set A equal to C. These are your properties. These are the reasonings, or I guess the reasons we're going to use in our proofs, which means we're going to only work with 2-column proofs. The left side of the proofs are going to have the statements or the problems. And then the right side is going to have all the reasons. Now the reasons right now will practically be all the properties of equality. That's all we're going to do right now. And what you're pretty much setting up is every problem has a given, the starting point, and the ending point. What you're given and what you need to prove. Everything in between are your properties. In other words, what happens when you go from one step to another. So notice here we wrote the given, 4x minus 1 equals 27. So how do we get to x equals 7? So what is the typical next step? Well, we need to add 1 to both sides. That's how I got 28. That's how this disappeared and I got 4x equals 28. Well, because I added, we ended up using the addition property. Here, we're going to end up dividing by 4. Divide by 4. Well, how did we get to our last answer? It's the division property. And guess what? We ended with the proof. And that's it. We're going to show our steps. And then these are our reasons. So we move on to the next page. Let's go to number 2. So we're given this problem that will always be your first step, and we need to prove a equals negative 18. The reason I provided all this is because I'm going to go through most of these, and in class I'll go through most of these, but then we're going to do some together, algebraic proofs. So what happens here, if I look at this problem, okay, what am I doing first? I'm going to have to move that plus 2 across. How do I get rid of plus 2? Well, I have to subtract from both sides. So if I subtract the 2 from this side, I get rid of him, which means I got to subtract 2 from this side, and that's how they got 3. So how did I go from the given to step 2? It's the subtraction property. Here, our last step is we have a fraction going on. How do I leave a by itself? Well, if we have a fraction, or we have a being divided by negative 6, well, I'm going to multiply times negative 6. Multiply this side times negative 6. That gets rid of this, leaves me a. 3 and negative 6 gives me negative 18. How did I go from that step down to the bottom? Well, I ended up using the multiplication property. And we're done. Once we get to our proof part, you don't need to go any further. Number 3, here's your given. So how did we go from step 1 to step 2? Well, we ended up distributing negative 9 to 2x and negative 9 to minus 3. So we have to give that reason, the distributive property. Then from step 2 to step 3, well, we moved the 27. There's addition there, which means we have to subtract from both sides. So we use subtraction property to get to this point. Negative 18 and x are multiplying. Well, that means in order for us to solve for x, we're going to have to divide. So we use division, and we get to x equals negative 2, which is our last part. Let's look at number 5. It's pretty long, so we write our given. We know we're going to have to distribute, and we're going to have to distribute. So step 1 to step 2, that's what happened here, and that's what happened here. We distribute. Notice that we have simplify here. The right side stayed the same, which means there wasn't really any movement to the equals. We didn't jump the equal sign, nothing changed on the right side, which means we didn't really change anything on the left side. All we did was simplify the left side. We combined like terms. So how do we go from step 3 to step 4? Well, we ended up moving the 12x. He's positive, so we subtracted it. And we get negative 15x. The next piece is we got to move this minus 14, which means we're going to add 14 to both sides. So that's how we get from that step to this one. We added 14 to both sides. That means we got rid of him. And since we added 14, we got negative 10. This last step is simple division. And at that point, we get x equals 1.5. That is our last step. Alright, so here are blank algebraic proofs for us. Let's see if we can handle these. I'll do 1 or 2, and then we'll do some more in class. Let's go with the basic, Let's go with number 1. So we know that the first step is always going to be the given. That means here we write 3x plus 1 equals negative 14. So that's our first step. Our second step. Okay, so what do I do here? I'm going to move the plus 1 across by subtracting. So I'm going to use the subtraction property. P-R-O-P. I'll accept that. That's going to leave me 3x is equal to negative 15. And our last step, well, we only have multiplication going on, so that means we're going to have to divide so that we get this answer. So we use the division property. Notice I'm expecting you to know the work, like what is happening. What did we do here so that we can get this? What did we do here so that we can get this? Let's do one more. Let's go with number 4. So our first step is the given. So we have 5y minus 1 over 2 equals 7. This is the given. Well, first step is to get rid of that 2 on the bottom, which means I'm going to have to multiply. If I multiply, that's going to leave 5y minus 1. But if I multiply 2 on both sides, that means this side gets 14. Multiplication. Property. That's step 2. Step 3, we're going to move the minus 1 across by adding. If I add 1, that's going to leave me 5y on this side. If I add 1, I'm going to get 15 on that side. So I ended up with using the addition property. Last step is simply division. I'm going to divide 5y by 5, and I'm going to divide 15 by 5, and I'm going to get y equals 3. This was the division property. And we're done. This is pretty much what you're going to do for your work. Alright guys, see you mañana.